Well, I'll just go ahead and kick us off. I'll do a little bit of housekeeping here. I don't think I need to so formally introduce myself, but just in case we have not met, my name is Katrina. I'm the Executive Director at Naturally Austin. And welcome to our today's workshop Wednesday. So a couple of housekeeping items. If you can keep your camera on, we would love it. And then, I think sometimes since it's an intimate group, we want our presenters to be able to get that real-time feedback from you. So that's one of the ways that we can do that. And we are talking provenance today. I do love that word so much. It's such a fun word to say, which is provenance. If this is your first time hearing about that word, it's a major consumer driven trend informing buying decisions. So it's a super important topic. It's also what it means is that it's the consumer's interest in authenticity and where their food comes from, aka the ingredients that are in your products and where they're sourced. So we'll cover how you can partner and how that ingredient can be part of your brand story, how partnerships work and how you can grow your audience through that, and examples of how brands are successfully leveraging provenance. So since we are a smaller group, I'd love to go ahead and maybe just do a quick roundtable of who's here and why you're interested in the topic. So Laura, I'm going to pick on you first.
I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Livestock, which is taking a native plant from Texas, pecans, and turning it into the newest plant-based milk. And so what we do is upcycling the less perfect pecans, which are still very delicious, the pieces, and making them into something that's very nutritious and very, very tasty.
Well, you are just in the right place. Sarah, how about you?
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I'm the co-founder of Lady Bird Provisions. We are a functional beverage enhancer company, and based in Austin, and really excited to learn about how to get messaging across and really highlight ingredients and grab consumers' attention. So here to learn and listen.
Awesome, Sarah. I actually was meaning to email you about something, so I'm really glad that you're here. So I'm giving you a heads up. I'll be emailing you later today. Alicia, what about you?
Hi, y'all. My name's Alicia. I'm the founder of Teddy V Patisserie. We make really large chocolate chip cookies. They're a third pound. They're actually 7 ounces, so almost half a pound. We're at the farmer's market, and we will be in our first retailer in May. So CPG feels pretty new to me, but I'm excited for this topic because we at the beginning of the year, we started using Vital Farms eggs and Plugra, the European cultured butter. And I haven't really made a big deal about it as I intended to. So I'm excited to kind of know how I can speak more around that in my messaging.
Awesome. And when I have some friends that are feeling down, I buy your cookies and I send it to them.
Thank you so much.
So leading us through this conversation is Allison Beadle, who's the founder and CEO of Wild Hive. If you attended the summit, she was in our 9 a.m. panel. And Emily McPhee, Research and Development Manager at Rubicon Bakers. I'll let the ladies do a bigger introduction. So, Allison, take it away.
Hey, everybody. So it's so good to be here with you all today. And I'm really delighted, actually, that we've got such an intimate group here because we're just going to be able to have a conversation. It's as if we are sitting around a table together. And I hope that we can create that dynamic during our time together today, so we can just talk about this really interesting trend and what's happening with this trend out in the broader environment, but also have some conversations with y'all about how this trend can impact your brand, what you may already be doing where you could leverage this trend. A little bit of background on myself, as Katrina mentioned. I'm the founder and CEO of Wild Hive. Wild Hive is a consulting and like marketing communications company specializing in food, agriculture, and nutrition. And I am actually a dietitian by training. So I started off my career as a registered dietitian, but I've spent pretty much my entire career working on the food industry side of the equation. And I started off in the early 2000s working in marketing for Central Market, and which, you know, all of us in Texas here are familiar with. And Emily, I know you're familiar with Central Market vis-a-vis HEB. And then I went on to work for a large global PR and marketing firm. And then in 2012, started Wild Hive. And we are based in Austin, and we work with a variety of different clients kind of throughout the whole spectrum of the food chain. We are very heavily focused on agriculture. And I'll talk a little bit more about this when we get into the presentation, because that certainly influences my point of view on this trend. But that's me in a nutshell. And so, Emily, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself.
Make sure I say good afternoon to everybody. It's I'm based in California, so it's still technically morning here. But my name's Emily. I'm the R&D manager here at Rubicon Bakers. My background is in kind of formal baking and pastry training, as well as food science. And once I kind of got into, well, I finished school and kind of got into working. My background has actually led me through working for national grocery retailers, as well as in food manufacturing settings. So I started off with Safeway. Safeway was bought by Albertsons. And then I went on to Whole Foods. And then kind of from a food manufacturing perspective, I worked for a company called Taylor Farms. And then currently here at Rubicon Bakers. But that's kind of the nutshell version of it.
All right. Katrina, are we ready to roll?
Yeah, take it away.
Okay. So I'm going to share my screen. I've got, just to let y'all know kind of what the flow is going to look like today. I'm going to talk first, and I've got, I'm going to give an overview of this provenance trend and talk about what's driving it. And then how this trend is expressing itself out in the marketplace with, we'll have, I'll show, several different examples. What this trend can do for brands in terms of really helping to make brands more competitive. At the end of the day, that's what it's about, and more competitive and relevant to consumers. And then I'm going to hand it over to Emily, and Emily is going to talk about a project actually that she's been working on with Rubicon Bakers, and we've actually been working on it collaboratively, or my team has been working more directly with Emily on this on behalf of one of our clients, the Washington Red Raspberry Commission. And so with Emily, you're going to get to kind of get an insider's perspective on how Rubicon has leveraged this trend in new product development. And but like I said early on, we've got such a nice intimate group here. If you have any questions, or feel free to, I think, like raise your hand or just kind of jump in. Like I'm really comfortable with that. So let me share my screen here and move this out of the way so I can make my slides go. Okay, here we go. So this is just I mentioned, or this is just a quick snapshot, some visuals of clients that we work with. And I mentioned early on, when I was talking about Wild Hive and who we are and what we do, that we are really kind of heavily focused on the agriculture side of the equation. But many of our clients are commodity boards, or what sometimes you'll hear them referred to as checkoff programs. So these are farmer, producer, grower funded groups that research and promote a specific agricultural product. And so the Washington Red Raspberry Commission is one of our clients, Texas Pecan Board, Texas Peanut Board, National Mango Board, American Lamb Board. So we work National Watermelon Board. So we work with a lot of these different boards, but then we also do work with packaged food companies. And on the CPG side of our client mix, we really tend to focus on brands that are heavily invested in the ingredients that they are using, and often those ingredients come from an agricultural source, and that ingredient story becomes part of the brand story. So I would say that that's something that we really specialize in. And so just know that this is part of the sort of worldview and food worldview that I bring to the table here. The commodity boards that we work with, our work with them involves, consumer marketing, as well as marketing to the trade and food service and ingredients or ingredient companies, food manufacturers that use these products as ingredients. And we also work with them on their nutrition communications, what they can say from a nutrition science data standpoint, and also from a regulatory standpoint. So we kind of just handle that whole mix for them. Now, we are here today to talk about this trend around provenance, which is a trend that I love because it, to me, really carries so much meaning to it. If you look up the definition of provenance in Webster's dictionary, it is super simple. Provenance essentially means origin or source. And that really is the whole focus of this trend, is what is the source of the brand's identity? And then even tracing that back to what is the source of the ingredients that are being used by the brand. And if you really think about it, this all is very much clustering around transparency, which we've been talking about for a long time. Now it seems, the importance of transparency, and that need from a consumer standpoint is only continuing to grow. I love this quote from Luann Williams. She's a director of insights and innovation from Innova Market Insights, a market research company. And when talking about trends in 2021, she said, transparency throughout the supply chain will dominate in 2021, with consumers searching for brands that can build trust, provide authentic and credible products, and create shopper confidence in the current and post-COVID climate. So, I think transparency was already becoming a huge interest of consumers. Consumers may not refer to it using the word transparency. That's kind of an industry lingo and jargon. We use that term to describe what consumers will often, refer to as where my food comes from, or, can I trust this? So transparency to consumers, they use other words to describe what, we in the industry are referring to as transparency. In terms of trends for 2021, this also came from the Innova Market Insights report. They noted that 6 in 10 global consumers are interested in learning more about where their food comes from. So this is not just a trend that is, isolated to the US or to certain countries. It is a global trend. So it's reached that level of pervasiveness. And it's also not just exclusive to urban areas, and it's not just exclusive to higher income, higher educated consumers. We are starting to see this be an interest that's becoming increasingly more and more mainstream, which means that because of that, it's a trend that is very accessible. And it's also a trend that we all need to be paying attention to, because no matter where your brand falls or where your target audience falls, this is a trend that is important to, increasingly important to all consumers. ADM, big ingredient company, put out a trend prediction for 2021 back in the fall. And this was one of the trends that they touched on was transparency. Again, huge trend. So, and they said in their trend report, consumers now expect food labels to provide greater transparency around the entire product life cycle, which is in turn driving demand for locally sourced products as consumers demand greater clarity on where their foods and beverages come from. So again, this trend around transparency is really driven by this consumer interest of, where does this product come from? What is the story behind it? Where are the ingredients from? Who's behind the brand? And all of that really does cluster around the consumer's need and desire to trust the brands that they're putting their dollars into. Another study that's came out of, this was a Euromonitor survey from last year, noted that 26% of global consumers are looking for country of origin on food and drink labeling. So about a third of consumers are now interested in, broad brushstrokes that, really from a labeling standpoint, seeing this origin information on the product packaging. So they are looking for it. They are not just wondering about it. They are now seeking it out as they're shopping in the grocery store. So I want to spend a little bit of time here just talking about the numerous trend drivers that are all pointing toward provenance. I've got transparency up at the top here because I really believe that this is the most critical driver of this trend around origin and source. Transparency is what consumers are kind of using to define the authenticity of a product and to determine if they can trust a brand. And we know that trust is so critical, especially in a highly competitive market that we're all in, because trust is fundamental to building loyalty. And that ultimately, as brands, that's what we want. We want our customer base to be loyal to our brand because we want them to come back to us continuously. So again, it's that transparency that really helps to form the foundation of trust. And that all is driving this provenance trend. I mentioned authenticity, consumers desiring to have authentic experiences with their foods and beverages that they're purchasing. Part of having that authentic experience is really understanding the backstory of the brand, and not just who founded the brand, why the brand exists, but where the brand is based, and what is the origin story of the brand, and then by default and going deeper, the origin story of the actual ingredients. And we're going to talk about the ingredient standpoint, the ingredient focus of this in just a little bit. Natural. Okay. So, natural has been, a big interest of consumers for a long time now. And we talk about this a lot, how there is no clear definition or regulatory oversight of the use of the claim natural. And that goes both in the US as well as globally. But we know that natural means something to consumers, but it is very loosely defined. And because there is no regulatory oversight of the natural claim, consumers use other cues to help them determine if a product is natural. Provenance is one of those cues that consumers use to help determine the naturalness of a product. So if our customers have an understanding of where the brand comes from, where the ingredients come from, that in their mind helps them to equate that brand with natural. And the same thing goes for health. Now, I'm a dietitian, and, I have a very scientific approach to how we define health and how we communicate about health. But that does not necessarily mean that consumers have that same approach to how they define health. In the consumer's mind, understanding the provenance of the ingredients, where they come from, what their origin is, that creates this aura of health. So not necessarily there is certainly no, scientific connection between where an ingredient comes from and its health benefit, but that doesn't necessarily matter in the minds of the consumers, as we know. Perception is everything with consumers, and that is very much the case when it comes to health. Differentiation. So the Provenance Trend really provides brands with an opportunity to differentiate against competitors. And I think, and this goes for both competitors within the small and emerging brand segment of the CPG world, as well as big mainstream brands. So, really being able to differentiate your story by digging deeply into the provenance of the brand and of the ingredients just provides another facet of differentiation in the way that you define yourself as a unique brand in the marketplace. Sustainability, same thing, not necessarily any scientific connection between the sustainable attributes of a product and the origin of their ingredients, but there is the origin of the ingredients, the way the ingredients were produced, that certainly can then reinforce certain sustainability attributes of the brand or the brand's commitment to sustainability, which is often, really what consumers are looking for. They just want to know that sustainability matters to a brand, and that sustainability is driving decision making in terms of how the brand is going about developing new products, what ingredients that they're sourcing, and they've got those attributes of sustainability in mind when they are going out and determining what ingredients are going to source for a new product. And then finally, purpose. This is something I feel like we are hearing a lot about these days, increasingly more and more. Sorry, my door just opened, which means it was probably one of my kids trying to come in here. So purpose, that's something we're hearing more and more about and this is not just exclusive to CPG companies. This goes across all businesses, all organizations. We are seeing an increasing push toward really defining the purpose of a brand and the impact that that brand is having because of their commitment to purpose. And provenance is a way that brands can demonstrate their purpose back to consumers. So as you can see, this trend around provenance, and I think this is why it's so interesting to me, is it addresses multiple consumer interests. It's not just about where does my food come from? It really is this whole spectrum of different interests that consumers are using when they're thinking about what they're going to put their dollars into, what they're going to buy at the grocery store. A lot of this really does underscore this trend around provenance.
Hey, Allison, we have a couple of questions in the chat.
Oh.
Do you mind if we hop into that?
Yeah, let's hop into questions.
Sarah, well, your question was, what if you use several different products that come from different countries? Would you put country of origin for each ingredient on a label?
Absolutely. Yeah. And let's see, I'm going to back up just a little bit here. So yeah, absolutely. I think, the reality is that is part of your brand story. And if you are sourcing ingredients from multiple countries, fine. You don't have to be sourcing all your ingredients from one place. And, this is, when we talk about local, because I actually think that this provenance trend is really an outgrowth of the local interest that consumers have had for a long time that I think has now gone fully mainstream. Provenance is just kind of taking that trend to a different level. And because, at the end of the day, how consumers define local varies drastically. Some consumers define local as like within, a 15-mile radius of where I live. That's hardcore. Others, will say 100-mile radius. Other consumers define local as like the city, the metropolitan area that I live in. Others, it is the state that I live in or the country that I live in. So, local doesn't, local is, I think, underscoring this whole trend around provenance, but provenance is not exclusive to local. At the end of the day, consumers just want to know they want more transparency in the entire supply chain. And so if you're sourcing ingredients from multiple companies, multiple countries, you can make that's part of your brand story. And you talk about that. I mean, hard to do that on a product package necessarily, but in your material, in your social media, on your website, where you have more room to get into more, detailed storytelling, you can go into that detail more in depth.
Awesome. And then Laura had a question around what are the case studies that demonstrate the market value of provenance and transparency? Is there any quantitative value of these claims?
Yeah. So there have been a number of different market research reports that have come out over the past couple of years. Nielsen has put some work into this. New Nutrition Business, which is a trends consulting company out of the UK. They've also put a lot of work into looking at the market value of these trends. So there is data out there on that. And I'll say that I think that what I'm seeing is that this trend around provenance is really, we certainly have examples of it here in the US. I'm going to talk about some of those, but it's really getting big in Europe. And that is not unusual as food trends go. We typically see them start in Europe and the UK and then migrate over to North America. And so there are a lot of good examples in the marketplace in Europe where even major brands are starting to leverage this trend and with new product development. And I recently listened to a really interesting podcast where the head of R&D for Kellogg was being interviewed. And in that interview, he actually talked about this. And I thought it was so interesting to hear a huge brand like Kellogg talking about the importance of transparency from an ingredient standpoint and how Kellogg as a company is really working to build in that traceability from farm all the way to the finished product that's in the Kellogg products and make that information available to consumers. So I think that's another thing that you can use as a signal that there is marketplace interest in this. Is when you're seeing big legacy brands like Kellogg and Danone and General Mills get behind this, that is a trigger that there is certainly marketplace value out there for it.
I think, Laura, this answers your next question, which is, will provenance be big in Texas or just in New York and California?
No, it's important everywhere. Yeah, so that is one thing about this trend that I think is important to note. And everything that I've read about it is this is a very cross-cutting trend that is kind of agnostic to where consumers are, what their demographics are, what their education and income level are. So yeah, it's definitely not just a Texas thing. I mean, in Texas, we love Texas products, but this is, and certainly in big urban areas, this is, I think this has probably been an interest and a trend for a longer period of time. But what we're seeing now is that this is just really starting to go mainstream.
Awesome. I think that's all the questions for now.
Okay, cool. All right. So I just want to quickly touch on a few brands that are leveraging this trend in different ways. So, certainly we'll talk about the, leveraging this trend from an ingredient standpoint, but even, but provenance isn't necessarily exclusively focused on ingredients. Sometimes it is just a style of the way that a product is made. So like as an example of a big CPG company using provenance from a traditional production standpoint, Yoplait launched this their wee line of yogurt several years ago. It's a French style yogurt and it's packaged very French. And so that would be an example of leveraging this provenance trend, kind of, with some signals to this is a traditional French style, and drawing from the perception that consumers have about France and the quality of food that comes from France, and then package that up into a product that may have 0 ingredients coming from France, but it's more of the style of the product that's drawing from provenance. Kerrygold, they have been masters at this, in drawing from the Irish source of their brand and their product. And so theirs is, more of a source focused cue into provenance. This company or this brand Nordy, this is a chocolate brand that was launched, I want to say year before last, by a Finnish CPG company. And all of the bars in the specific Nordy line that they launched were all flavors that drew from traditional Finnish ingredients. And so this would be an example of, they're not necessarily sourcing their ingredients from Finland, but they are drawing from that ingredient story in terms of the culinary interest of the ingredients, and then relating that into a Nordic brand. A couple of these at the bottom here. So this in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, this Danone in France actually launched a line of yogurts. I want to say this was last year, maybe in the year before last. And this is a very niche brand that Danone launched, where they are calling out the exact regions in France where they are sourcing specific ingredients. So, they may be sourcing, strawberries from the Champagne region, and, citrus from the Languedoc or whatever, so they're just calling out where they are sourcing these specific ingredients from within the country of France. And this was a product line that was just exclusive to France, or is exclusive to France, and it's still in the marketplace. And so one of the things that often comes up when we talk about provenance, and certainly working with on the agricultural side with ingredients have a seasonality. And especially, when you're talking about sourcing ingredients from a specific region, sometimes, the supply may be small. And once that ingredient's gone, it's gone. And that is, Danone has actually used that scarcity as a strength of this brand, and that, certain products within this specific brand, if the ingredient goes out of season and the supply is no longer available, that one is not available anymore. And that's just something that, the consumers who are buying this brand come to understand and appreciate about it. And then just another example of drawing from a traditional production practice or style would be Icelandic Provisions, which is a Icelandic skier company. So drawing from the Icelandic tradition and process of creating skier. Again, this is a product that is made here in the US out of milk sourced from here in the US, but the style is Icelandic. So all examples of brands that are leveraging provenance in one way or another. So I want to just share this slide with y'all. This is a new product that I literally just launched this week. And as I was putting my slides together, I came across this. This is a Danone product called Honest to Goodness. It is a plant-based creamer. And their whole focus with this line is traceability. And they even on their website, they go into, very specific storytelling around where they are sourcing their ingredients from: organic sugar from Brazil, coconuts from the Philippines, vanilla from Madagascar, salt from the Himalayas, and you can dig down further into that, and they just go a little bit more in depth into that ingredient story. So again, another example of a large brand leveraging this with a brand new product. And then these are examples of smaller to medium-sized brands that I wanted to share with y'all, because I really think that this is where the exciting opportunity is for emerging brands. I really think that this is telling your ingredient story is such a critical opportunity for you to differentiate yourself from other emerging brands in your category, and even from the larger legacy brands who are already starting to leverage this trend. So if you know you have an ingredient story, now is the time to start sharing that. So just to call out a couple on here, Tillamook, they have a line of yogurts where they are sourcing the fruit for those yogurts from Oregon in the Pacific Northwest, and they call that out on their product packaging. Patagonia has a line of buffalo jerky, and they go into very specific storytelling around sourcing the buffalo from the plains of the United States. So this is all sourced from North Dakota. Trader Joe's, they have a Hatch chili mac and cheese. We know Hatch chilies have gone big time in terms of a ingredient interest here within the US. And Trader Joe's is leveraging that in this macaroni and cheese product. But there are obviously numerous others that we could talk about, you know, where and these are not big brands. These are small to medium sized brands. I guess we could argue Trader Joe's is pretty big, but where they are drawing from this trend and then leveraging it into their ingredient story. And so I'm going to just real quickly touch on what's in it for me. You know, why does this matter? What could this actually bring your brand in terms of value? Obviously, premium positioning. So this just enables your product to position itself as premium. It underscores that premium nature of the product, which therefore allows you to charge premium pricing. So it can certainly help from a financial side of the business. Differentiation, we've already talked about that. Authenticity and quality cues back to your brand, transparency and trust. Impact, this is one I want to just sit on for just a second. So this goes back into the purpose driver of this trend. But when you think about the specific impact that this can have on local communities, on small producers that you may be sourcing ingredients from, on family farmers, you can really see the impact that your brand can have all the way back down the supply chain, down to the farm gate level. And then certainly from a marketing partnership standpoint, this is an area where I think, you know, we can really get creative as brands are, you know, as you're getting closer to the ingredient companies that you're purchasing from, look at those as opportunities to co-market your product with the ingredient brands. And this is a way to increase your reach on social media by tapping into their audience, and then they can tap into your audience. So there's opportunity for amplification there. But social media is just one way where you can partner on this. Certainly from a media relations standpoint, there's opportunities there to co-promote and to share marketing dollars. And even at, you know, once we get back into events and festivals and that sort of thing, you know, there's just opportunities to stretch marketing dollars further when you are partnering with your ingredient suppliers who are part of your story. So I want to start transitioning now over to Emily, and she's going to talk about this product that we have worked collaboratively on, and she's going to tell you the backstory on this. But these cupcakes are amazing. It's the only thing I want to say here. When I got to try the samples of these, I was blown away. And this is a partnership, as I mentioned, or a collaboration with the Washington Red Raspberry Commission. Emily's going to talk about how this all came about, but essentially the Washington Red Raspberry Commission represents the growers of raspberries that are grown in the state of Washington. almost all of the raspberries that are grown in Washington go into either they're processed immediately. Like once they are harvested, they are either quick frozen into IQF, individually quick frozen raspberries that are sold in poly bags and grocery store freezer departments, or they are made immediately into puree and juice concentrate. So that's kind of an interesting facet of the Washington red raspberry industry. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Emily to talk about this trend in application.
Thanks, Allison. So I realized when I kind of was giving a little bit of background about myself that I should have also given you a little bit of background about Rubicon Bakers. So Rubicon Bakers, we say that they're turning their lives around with every cake, cupcake, cookie, and muffin they bake. So Rubicon Bakers was founded in the early 90s, and we've helped rebuild lives by employing, training, and supporting people who need a second chance. Many of our employees come to Rubicon from a life on the streets, from prison, or recently recovered from substance abuse. So we provide employment so they can turn their lives around. Rubicon Bakers is a certified B Corporation. That's a corporation that's certified by the international nonprofit B Lab. And the purpose of this is to meet rigorous standards of social and environmental performance, accountability, and transparency. As the B Lab puts it, B Corporation status is to business as fair trade certification is to farming. Right now, Rubicon Bakers is the only certified B Corporation cake manufacturer and in the US, and one of only 4 in the broader bakery category within the United States. So that's kind of a little bit about us. That Allison did a great job of kind of queuing up all of the things that are super trendy about brands and how to position yourself. And I think in a lot of ways, Rubicon Bakers and this particular product, and among others that we have, really hit on almost all of those points. So this partnership came about working with so Wild Hive represents the Washington Red Raspberry Commission, and they put together an event. And when I was invited to participate in this event, I was really excited. We, as a company, we have kind of a mutual admiration for what the commission stands for. So their event called Bacon and Shaken is normally, this happened in 2020. So normally it would be an in-person event where you could learn about the different red raspberry products that they offer. They have guest chef presentations using the showcased red raspberry ingredients, as well as be able to participate hands-on. 2020 took the event virtual over a period of several weeks. And it was a great experience, and I used it as an opportunity to kind of see how I could potentially integrate the red raspberries into a product need within our product assortment. I think one of the key call outs on doing something like this is to really keep in mind, how does this mutually benefit both of you? How can you showcase this item in such a way that you're true to the ingredient, but you're also very true to your own brand story? So keeping that in mind, that kind of kicked off how we kind of do our internal R&D process. And so I'll kind of walk through how we went through the process of developing this, and then outline some of the challenges that come up with doing things like this. I say myself and the R&D team, we're pretty lean and mean team, but we partner and work really closely with our internal sales team. And we work hand in hand to stay up to date on the forefront of innovation within the retail market space, as well as we look at things from independent restaurants and bakeries all the way up to kind of national retailers, and not so much international, but we do keep a pretty wide scope on that. We're always looking at our product mix to evaluate performance and then identify if there's any gaps where we can innovate to better support our customers. We also have a close working relationship with our customers who partner with us for doing private label products. And to, help support collaborations like this, we sorry, kind of lost my train of thought there. So that's one of the unique benefits of working with us in terms of, we have our branded portfolio, but we also partner with some customers to produce products that go under their brands. And we can do anything from kind of something if they come to us with a request to have very defined, or go to them with ideas as well. So for this, back to this project, we focused on developing under our own branding. We wanted to leverage the power of our brand story, partnered with the Red Raspberry Commission to showcase the quality of the products. Next, we wanted to identify which category our product assortment to focus on. Our vegan cake and cupcake lines are placed nationally within retailers and have grown in demand steadily over the last few years. And this is closely following the rise of the plant-based diet trend. Knowing that I wanted to target a profile that fit within a cake or a cupcake, I was looking for the best fit when it came to how to incorporate the red raspberries. I knew I wanted to have a raspberry be the complementary flavor, since we had already talked through the idea of adding a lemon profile to our vegan lineup. So this seemed like a pretty solid combo to start with. One of the things that we focus on here at Rubicon is we tend to use only honest ingredients in our finished products. That means we seek out products that are non-GMO verified, RSPO certified, and then we only use natural colors and flavors that have been derived from fruits and vegetables. As you can imagine, this does present some challenges to working with those items and developing baked products. For example, the colors and the flavors have to be heat stable. All of our products go through a frozen distribution cycle, so any flavor, color, or garnish has to withstand that. So it definitely has some challenges when designing a product that you kind of keep all of those things in mind so that you get the result that you want. So we decided to focus on lemon raspberry, keeping all of the limitations that we had in mind. You kind of then focus on what you are able to do. We decided on a lemon cake just because the lemon flavor driver that we were using, we knew was very heat stable, would perform very well in a cake. And then we wouldn't have to worry about color loss during baking. So that kind of pushed me into, identifying using raspberry as a component within the icing to be that complementary flavor. So as part of that Red Raspberry Commission event, they had a handful of ingredients that they showcased. It was everything from IQF whole raspberries, IQF raspberry crumbles, puree, freeze-dried raspberries. I decided to play a little bit further with the puree because I thought it would be able to drive the most flavor and color with kind of the most cost-effective balance to that. The biggest challenge that I ran into with using the puree would be raspberries tend to have a very high water content, which you have to really be careful with any sort of product. Having too high of a water activity, it can cause rancidity or molding and things like that ahead of what your shelf life target might be. So had to keep that in mind, but kind of being able to bring the expertise of product development to this, there are certain things that you can do to keep those things in line and have your checks and balances to make sure that you're not going to shorten your shelf life unknowingly. So once we were done kind of fine tuning it, we had to find a customer to sell this product to. So the cupcakes were great. We knew that they were a great product. We decided to focus on our customers that were based in the growing region for these raspberries. So in this case, it would be Washington and the Pacific Northwest. And so we focused on customers such as New Seasons Market, PCC, Hagen's, and Metropolitan Market. And so we know that, you know, when you have a local hero brand, it's easy for the end customer to connect that to the additional brand power of the product. And we focused more on a regional introduction of this product, and we have since kind of introduced it to other customers as well. And so we are hoping that, not hoping, we will shortly you'll be able to find this product kind of nationally coast to coast. The other challenge with the puree was that we needed a supplier that not only met our ingredient requirements, but also, since this was a collaboration with the Red Raspberry Commission, we wanted to make sure that we supported the supply chain that was part of their organization. And so kind of one big advantage to partnering with the commission and Wild Hive is that they're able to connect us with a grower who they also process their own crops. So for us, that meant that we could trust that the raspberries in the puree that we were purchasing came from the growing region that we were calling out on the product. So there's a few challenges kind of back and forth, but I mean, keeping all of these in mind, there's a lot more advantages to being able to work through some of the challenges that, you know, the end result of it means that you have a very good partnership between what the ingredient is and what the finished product is presenting.
I have a quick question on did the Raspberry Commission, your suppliers, because you were calling out the general area, did they help you get into the store?
In this case, no. We focused on our customer relationships that we already had within the region. But that's definitely something that you could leverage if you didn't necessarily have those connections out the gate.
Thank you. I know we have 5 minutes before we hit the top of the hour. I think Laura had a question. What would it take to leverage the Provenance in introduction? Is that, Laura, is that a question directed at Emily or Allison or both?
I guess both, but I'm just interested. Emily, you just said that you already had the relationship, so that wasn't an issue. The underlying question here is for people who don't live in France and are snobby about champagne versus this and that. We're Americans, we're not as up to speed on provenance, and we don't have 100 years of experience with New Zealand butter. So where do you think it would be a first mover? Where would it just start moving opinion?
Allison, I'll let you jump in here if you have any ideas. I think I'm going to mull this one over. I kind of have some ideas that are battling.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's I'll jump in. I'll jump in real quick. And you know, Laura, this is something you and I've talked about, and I think this is also something that we're seeing play out with Rubicon, is really focusing on the region that is going to have the most natural affinity for the ingredient that you're leveraging in the product. So in the case of Rubicon's cupcakes here, it's a Washington raspberry ingredient. We can make a very educated guess that consumers in the Pacific Northwest are going to have a higher affinity for that and for that brand affiliation with Washington raspberries and Rubicon than a consumer in, say, New Jersey. And so that, I think it's like start from and work from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. So is there I guess at the end of the day, this is about a buyer at Trader Joe's sitting somewhere. Is it where is the first person who would get Oregon? I think about Maine and blueberries, but Oregon and raspberries, that matters to me.
Mhm. Well, I mean, so I think it's with the retailers that are based in that region, or or for larger national chains, sometimes they will just slot new products into specific regions when the product is launching. So, if you're talking about a Whole Foods or a Kroger, it may be talking with the buyer about launching this product in this specific region. Let's see how it performs. Let's do a marketing push around this product in that region. And if there's good performance in that region with a national chain, then they can roll it out nationally. Like that's another way that, and I've seen that happen. The other thing that I would say, so that's one strategy in approaching the conversation with a national retailer. Another strategy of approaching the conversation with a national retailer would be to draw more from the broader trend, and not necessarily fixating on the origin of the ingredient in Washington, but focusing with the buyer on how this product leverages the broader trend of provenance and what consumers are looking for in terms of transparency. And if you bring this product on board, you, Kroger, Whole Foods, or whoever you're talking to, are demonstrating your own commitment to transparency as a retailer in the products that you are sourcing or you are bringing in for your product mix in store. So I think that's kind of another strategy for leveraging this with a national level retailer.
I think adding on a little bit to that too, the when you go to develop an item, I mean, in this case, we had the Washington raspberries, but we also followed in on the plant-based diet trend, and we also focused on a flavor that was a combo that's very recognizable, that is and relatable, that the consumer would know exactly what raspberry lemon is going to taste like. So as you go through, our customers that happen to be in the growing region of the raspberries already knew the raspberry connection, and the others were kind of secondary. When we presented to the Northeast region of Whole Foods, they're looking at it as it's a vegan item. We know the brand, and we like that it's a fruit place within only vanilla and chocolate at this point. So it's really making sure that your item kind of has several facets, so that depending upon your customer, you can speak to the right one for that customer. And the other ones, one will be the main and the others will just kind of be supporting beneficial pieces of why they should choose your product.
So well said, Emily. I mean, and essentially what you're talking about is your message hierarchy and targeting your messaging, and and making your message hierarchy specific to the specific audience, whoever it is that you're talking to. Buyers in different areas are going to have different interests, and so that's, you hit it on the nail on the head there.
We are out of time today, but I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to connect with Allison and Emily. So I'm going to add their info here. If you missed it the first time around, again, as always, this was such a great conversation, and it's everyone's questions that really, bring out the depth of the discussion and making it about your product. This is how, this is how it's helpful, right? So thank you so much for bringing those questions in. And of course, we always want feedback from everyone. So before we go, if you don't mind filling out this form, it will take all of 10 seconds. It will just help us continue to get better at events like this. And Emily and Allison, thank you so much. Naturally, Austin has a ton of other events coming up, and we're actually turning a whole 2 years old on March 26th. So we're kicking off birthday week with several events. We have a town hall event on this Friday that essentially is helping our members plug into a lot of the new member-driven initiatives that we've got that we're going to be launching with you, alongside you. For example, one of those things is building out our angel network. So really excited for that. And then we've got some panels next week, and we're capping off the week with our 2-year birthday happy hour. So that event, again, will also be all about the members, featuring some of the amazing folks like Sarah, which is why I wanted to reach out to you. I would love to get you as part of that, because I'd love to talk about the growth of Ladybird in the last, since we've launched naturally. So this is my unofficial ask after I send you this email.
Love it. Always happy to be a part of these things. So yes.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for making the time. So appreciate you, Allison and Emily. Thank you so much for, this is, I think this is a trend that a lot of our brands can really leverage, and excited to be recording this and getting this out into the world. I have lots of notes also. So excited to get that out to everyone. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone. It's been a lot of
Thank
fun.
you.